This lecture is about the choice between the passive and the active voice and how to use them in the various sections of your paper. First, to be able to make an informed choice for the passive voice, you need to understand the underlying grammar. So study this slide before you go on with watching the video. I have highlighted a pitfall for Dutch authors. The English passive voice in the present simple is quite similar to the Dutch passive in the present perfect. So don't confuse the two. To start with, we have to acknowledge that the active voice is the more clear and straightforward construction. I did it is processed more easily than this is done by me. Now, why would the passive be a good idea in a given context? Let's look more closely to the effects of the passive voice. The passive voice is a construction that helps the author to hide the actor of the sentence. And in that respect, the passive is a real whodunit. Look with me at these examples. Samples were analyzed, the dog was beaten, my wallet was stolen, and the patient was examined. Now, who analyzed the samples? Who has been beating the dog? Who stole my wallet? Who examined the patient? We don't know. And probably, to get the message here in a certain given context, we do not need to know. The focus is on the object and on the action itself. So, the passive voice is a useful structure if we don't want to waste words on the actor of the sentence, the actor of the action, the one who did it. Note that the author may choose to insert the actor if he feels this is more clear or if he wants to put emphasis on the one who did it. For example, samples were analyzed by students. The dog is beaten by Fred. My wallet was stolen by the old woman. Or the patient was examined by 2 medical doctors. The choice between these sentences and the active alternatives, like in these examples, students analyzed the samples, Fred beats his dog, the old woman stole my wallet, 2 medical doctors examined the patient. The choice depends totally on the emphasis you want to put on one of the parts of the sentences, and also of the flow and connection with the preceding or the following sentence. So, passive or active is, in many instances, it's a choice of style. So that means for your paper, for example, the methods, the passive may be the dominant voice here. If you are describing steps and procedures and it is clear enough who did all that, you and your group, then you can easily write, the samples were categorized, the tissues were stained, participants were questioned. It's the best choice here because no one needs to know who did it. They already know. But do switch to the active voice if you want to emphasize a decision or choice in your methods. For example, we constructed a sampling frame and selection process to minimize selection biases and maximize blah blah blah. So here you want to emphasize why you did something. So it's your acts, your decision that is important. In the methods section, it may be smart to set off with a we and then continue in the passive voice. Kind of, you enter the stage and then you modestly hide behind the curtains. like in we obtained informed consent, blah, blah, blah. This was done by, and then you proceed in the passive voice. Also, be aware of the fact that we is not the only alternative in the choice of passive or active. We'll read these two sentences and compare them for a minute. When the new protocol was applied, acceptable solutions were obtained. There's much emphasis on the applied and the obtained. When you switch this sentence to an active voice, you don't need a we. You can write after application of the new protocol. Each case resulted in acceptable or better solutions. Two active sentences, kind of crisp and transparent, and we do not need the passive here. Now, the passive voice may also help you to maintain cohesion, because the passive holds a swap from subject to object in comparison with the active voice. Starting the sentence with the object may be better in terms of flow. Now, this example illustrates that. The paragraph addresses an increase. Take a minute to read. It addresses an increase, and halfway, continuing with an active sentence like we could not attribute the increase to, would kind of interrupt the line of thought. The increase is kind of the key word here. It must also be upfront in the sentence. So a passive is better. The increase in positive words could not be attributed to blah, blah, blah. Neither is the increase driven by blah, blah, blah. So the increase is kind of the focal point, and the passive suits very well here. It's a nice choice. In summary, use the passive if the actor is not important, and if you want to describe general facts, relations, or associations. Whenever you can, to write crisp and clear, choose for the active voice. Also, if necessary, in methods and results, to underline your reasons and your goals. You can use the active voice in the introduction, when you are explaining your study, your research question in the final paragraph of the introduction, like in this study, we aim to. Or in the discussion to be quite clear about what you did or what you found or what you think. So in this study we developed a method that, or we conclude, or we recommend. So the moment you are you want to express that you're using your own brain, use we. Lastly, maybe you wonder about how journals think about this. And my answer here is take some time to check some papers in your own field for their use of active and passive voice. Now this slide shows a selection of instructions for authors from several journals. Note that the active voice is the leading voice these days in scientific papers. Maybe some disciplines still favor the passive voice, but I think they are being a bit old-fashioned. Read the instructions of the British Medical Journal. Please write in a clear, direct, and active style. Use the first person when necessary. Also, the instructions of Nature journals like authors to write in the active voice. We performed the experiments, that's a methods section even, as experience has shown that readers find concepts and results to be conveyed more clearly if written directly. Okay, well, I'm curious about your own findings. Check the papers in your field and post some examples or your observations in Post a Remark.